Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a deep, clear, and fully updated look at the Ukraine-Russia war, breaking down how it started, how it evolved, what is happening now, and what it could mean for the future. This is a full breakdown designed to help you understand the conflict beyond headlines, propaganda, and social media noise, focusing on military realities, political goals, economic pressure, and global consequences. The roots of this war stretch back long before the first missiles were fired. Ukraine's modern history has been shaped by its position between Russia and Europe. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Ukraine became independent, but Russia never fully accepted losing influence over what it saw as part of its historical and strategic sphere. Ukraine, meanwhile, struggled with corruption, political instability, and economic hardship while slowly debating whether its future lay closer to Russia or with the West. A major turning point came in 2014. Mass protests in Kiev, known as the Maidan Uprising, erupted after Ukraine's president rejected a closer economic deal with the European Union under pressure from Moscow. The protests led to the government's collapse and a new, pro-Western leadership. Russia viewed this as a Western-backed coup and responded swiftly. It annexed Crimea after a disputed referendum and supported separatist movements in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. This marked the beginning of a low-intensity war that killed thousands but remained largely frozen for years. Diplomatic efforts like the Minsk agreements attempted to stop the fighting, but they never fully worked. Ceasefires were repeatedly broken, trust eroded, and both sides prepared for something bigger. Ukraine strengthened its military with Western training and equipment, while Russia modernized its forces and conducted massive military exercises near Ukraine's borders. By late 2021, warning signs were everywhere, with intelligence agencies predicting an invasion, even as Russia denied it. In February 2022, the conflict exploded into a full-scale war. Russian forces launched a multi-directional invasion, attacking from the north toward Kiev, from the east through Donbas, and from the south via Crimea. The world watched in shock as missiles hit Ukrainian cities. Russia expected a rapid collapse of Ukrainian resistance, believing Kiev would fall within days and the government would flee. That assumption proved catastrophically wrong. Ukraine's response surprised many observers. Ukrainian forces, supported by high morale, effective leadership, and widespread civilian resistance, slowed and then halted the Russian advance. Western-supplied weapons, especially anti-tank and anti-aircraft systems, played a key role. Russian logistical failures, poor coordination, and underestimation of Ukrainian resolve forced a retreat from northern Ukraine. Kiev remained standing, and the war entered a new, more brutal phase. As fighting shifted east and south, the war became one of attrition. Russia focused on capturing territory in Donbas, using massive artillery barrages to grind down Ukrainian positions. Cities like Mariupol were devastated, becoming symbols of the human cost of the war. Ukraine, meanwhile, adapted quickly, improving intelligence, sharing with Western partners, and using precision strikes to target Russian supply lines and command centers. One of the most important developments was the role of technology. Drones became central to battlefield awareness and precision strikes. Satellite imagery, real-time intelligence, and social media changed how war was fought and perceived. Ukraine used these tools effectively, while Russia struggled to adapt at the same pace. This technological imbalance helped Ukraine offset Russia's numerical advantages. The economic war unfolded alongside the fighting. Western countries imposed unprecedented sanctions on Russia, targeting banks, energy exports, and key industries. Russia responded by redirecting trade, tightening domestic control, and using energy as leverage against Europe. The sanctions damaged Russia's economy but did not collapse it, while Europe faced rising energy prices and inflation. The global economy felt the impact through disrupted supply chains and food shortages, particularly due to blocked grain exports from Ukraine. Ukraine's economy suffered massive destruction. Infrastructure, power grids, factories, and housing were repeatedly targeted. Millions of Ukrainians were displaced, creating one of the largest refugee crises in Europe since World War II. Despite this, Ukraine's government continued functioning, supported by international financial aid and loans that kept the state running during wartime. As the war continued, Ukraine launched successful counteroffensives. In late 2022, Ukrainian forces recaptured large areas in the Kharkiv region, exposing weaknesses in Russian defenses. Later, the liberation of Kherson marked another strategic victory, forcing Russian troops to withdraw from the west bank of the Dnipro River. These gains boosted Ukrainian morale and demonstrated that Russian forces were not unstoppable. Russia responded by escalating. It mobilized hundreds of thousands of reservists and intensified missile and drone attacks on Ukrainian energy infrastructure, aiming to break civilian morale during winter. These strikes caused widespread blackouts and suffering but failed to force Ukraine into submission. Instead, they strengthened international support for Kyiv and led to increased air defense deliveries. By 2023 and beyond, the war settled into a grinding stalemate in many areas. Trench warfare, minefields, and constant artillery exchanges dominated the front lines. Both sides suffered heavy casualties, though exact numbers remain disputed. Ukraine pushed for advanced Western weapons, including long-range missiles and modern tanks, arguing they were essential to break Russian defenses. Russia, meanwhile, relied on mass production, partnerships with other sanctioned states, and sheer numbers to sustain the fight. The political dimension of the war is just as critical as the military one. For Ukraine, the conflict is existential. It is about sovereignty, identity, and survival as an independent nation. Any concession of territory is seen by many Ukrainians as rewarding aggression and inviting future attacks. Public opinion in Ukraine strongly supports continued resistance, despite the immense human and economic cost. For Russia, the war has become deeply tied to domestic politics and national identity. The Kremlin frames the conflict as a struggle against NATO expansion and Western domination. Admitting failure would be politically dangerous for the leadership. As a result, Russia appears willing to absorb long-term losses to avoid defeat, even if that means a prolonged, costly conflict. The role of NATO and the United States has been decisive but carefully calibrated. Western countries have provided massive military, financial, and intelligence support to Ukraine while avoiding direct combat to prevent escalation into a wider war. This balancing act has defined the conflict, as Ukraine fights with Western backing but without formal NATO intervention. Globally, the war has reshaped geopolitics. It pushed NATO to expand, with new members joining out of fear of Russian aggression. It strengthened cooperation among Western allies while deepening divisions with Russia and its partners. Countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America have taken varied positions, balancing economic interests with political alignment, showing that the world is far from unified. Nuclear risk has remained an ever-present concern. Russia's nuclear rhetoric and control of nuclear facilities in occupied Ukrainian territory have alarmed the international community. While the use of nuclear weapons remains unlikely, the war has reminded the world how quickly conventional conflicts can raise existential threats. Peace efforts have repeatedly stalled. Ukraine demands full territorial integrity, while Russia seeks recognition of its territorial gains. These positions remain irreconcilable for now. Negotiations, when they occur, are limited and fragile. Most analysts believe the war will not end with a simple agreement, but through exhaustion, shifts in battlefield dynamics, or major political changes. Looking ahead, several scenarios are possible. The war could continue as a long-term frozen conflict, with periodic escalations but no decisive victory. Ukraine could eventually regain more territory with sustained Western support and improved military capabilities. Alternatively, Russia could stabilize its lines and wear down Ukrainian resources over time. Each outcome carries profound implications for European security and global stability. What is clear is that this war has already changed the world. It shattered assumptions about modern warfare, exposed vulnerabilities in global systems, and reminded everyone that large-scale conflict is not a thing of the past. The human cost continues to rise, with soldiers and civilians paying the highest price. As the situation evolves, understanding the full context is more important than ever. This is not just a regional conflict, but a struggle that touches energy markets, global food security, military doctrine, and the future of international law. The Ukraine-Russia war is shaping the next chapter of global history, and its consequences will be felt for decades. Thank you for staying with us through this full breakdown. If you found this analysis helpful, make sure to stay tuned for more in-depth updates, clear explanations, and honest discussions as the situation continues to unfold.